evening, and we just want to thank both of them for being with us this evening. I'll give them the opportunity right now to say hello to everyone. Hello, Miss Dyer. Hello, Mr. Rogers.
Hello, hello, hello. How you doing, everyone? I just want to welcome each and every last one of you all to Hidden in Plain Sight. Yes, this is our radio broadcast. So I just want to welcome you to the episode Hidden in Plain Sight, the radio broadcast. Just kind of want to let you know that we are here to financially educate and impact 1 million families. So I want to thank each and every last one of you all for joining us today. And also, I know we're here, like my name is Tasha M. Dyer, the Trade Whisperer, and I definitely want to allow our visionary to introduce himself. Mr. Rogers.
Greetings to our radio audience all around the globe. We're absolutely excited to be here. Special shout out to our host, Bishop Harold Rollison, our audience on the newrejoice904.com, and we're just absolutely excited to be in a position to share with each and every one of you that are listening from the depths of our heart and soul on information that is hidden in plain sight. And we just pray that this day will be something that your eyes are unopened and you're able to walk on water and keep your eyes focused on the prize and knowing that in due season you shall reap if you faint not. It's on the newrejoice904.com, and we're just absolutely excited to be in a position.
We're so happy that you mentioned that, Mr. Rogers. We were talking about walking on water, and we're excited about that fact. Matter of fact, I was just talking this afternoon. I said, well, man, what are we going to talk about today? And I heard a voice say something from somewhere, so about get out of the boat and get into the water. And that's, I thought about the passage that is there in Matthew 14, where Jesus had encouraged his disciples to go and get on the boat after he had fed 5,000 people. And so I thought it was a setup, because I know Jesus knows everything. And I think Jesus wasn't surprised that a storm came up. And so he sent them out on that boat, and he went away and prayed a while and spent some hours, and said when they got in the midst of the sea, a storm came up. And Jesus was walking out there to meet them. And they were afraid, and they looked, and the storm was so bad that when they looked out and toward the shore, they saw Jesus coming, and they thought he was a ghost. And Peter recognized Jesus in the midst of the storm. The storm was really bad. The wind was blowing, the water was splashing, the waves were blowing, but he still, in the midst of that storm, could recognize the presence of Jesus. He said, Lord, can I come out there with you? And Jesus got out of the boat and into the water. I thought that was an amazing story. I'm always amazed by that Jesus knew that a storm was coming up, and he sent them into the storm in order that might test their faith, and they would learn to trust in him and not be afraid. Now, Jesus has sent us into some storms, no doubt. We've all had some stormy episodes in our life, and there's no doubt about it that we've had some fearful moments in our life, and we looked out for help, and the only help we could see was to sense the presence of Jesus. Mr. Rogers, I think you are the one that kind of hinted toward this topic today, and so I want to ask you a question and see if you can get us all in context of what we're going to talk about today, because we've been talking about mindset. Dr. Fifewood did a great job last week helping us get our mindsets together. And if we're going to trade, we cannot operate in fear. So where is, who or what is the analogy of the boat? What is the boat that we find ourselves in that we need to kind of get out of?
Well, I think the boat that many of us have found ourselves in due to our upbringing, conversation that were never really held regarding financial endeavors, is simply about getting out of the boat of lack. Because when we have allowed ourselves to be crippled by the unknown, then that keeps us restricted from experiencing the wealth and abundance that being in covenant relationship with God the Father through his son, Jesus Christ, allows us to participate in. And knowing that of a certainty, even as you just made mention, they had just experienced Christ himself feeding 5,000 people with seemingly things that were inadequate from their understanding. And he materialized a miracle based on his power and his authority. And even in the midst of their limited faith, there was an abundance that took place. So if we give God a little something to work with, we no longer have to be restricted to that boat of lack, but we can walk in the place of refreshing. And when you look at water, water renews us. And even in the midst of us not having food, we can go a period of time without food, but there's nothing about humanity that can exist without water. So I think it's very appropriate that the very thing that would seemingly drown us gives us the ability to have life. And it's time to get out of that boat of lack and be responsible for operating in that place of wealth.
Well, that's something that Ms. Dyer and I talked about sometime, is that we try to be nonpartisan, and we try not to offend any of our listeners or our watchers. But there are those who want to make us comfortable in the boat. They want to, you listen at certain politicians and they say, we're gonna give you one more piece of chicken, and that way you'll be full, but you'll still be poor, but you'll have one extra piece of chicken. And so there seems to be a spirit that wants to make us comfortable where we are and not really experience the wealth and the plenty of God that's out there for us, and just get us comfortable with the little. What do you say to people that say, well, you know, I don't really want to have all that. I can just have a little bit and I'll be fine. And they're not really reaching for the higher heights. They set goals that maybe seem to be unreachable. They're not living out of their man, but they're living out of their poverty and their presence. What do you say to those people, Ms. Dyer? Ms. Dyer there?
Yes,
Dr. Bytewood, I think did Dr. Bytewood, you join the group?
Yes, sir, I have.
I'm so glad. I saw your name come up on the screen here. It's good to have you with us this evening, and we're not going to let you go. We're not going to let you just drift away from us. We claim your presence.
I appreciate that.
At 5 o'clock on Tuesday. Now all we got to do now is get that live picture of you that I saw the other night when you had on that wonderful bow tie. You look fantastic. I'm looking forward to you passing some of those wonderful bow ties on to Bishop. Bishop try to wear them every now and then when it's not too hot. Now,
I
Ms.
certainly
Dyer,
appreciate that.
yeah, now we're going to get back to Dr. Bytewood because we want to definitely hear what he has to say. But I'll just ask Ms. Dyer a question, and I rudely interrupted her, and I'm so sorry. Ms. Dyer, you were saying.
Nah, that's okay, Bishop. But no, what we're talking about, people are comfortable. People get comfortable. And a lot of times that's because they don't know, or they have to trust. And if you make reference and kind of go back to the scripture that you just quoted about getting out of the boat, just getting out of the boat and trusting the process, trusting yourself, you really want to put yourself in a position to where you don't accept the norm, or we quit accepting what someone else feeds us, and we quit accepting the fact that someone else will dictate our value, someone else is going to dictate our future, someone else is going to do those things. And that's where we've been conditioned. And so why is it so important for the exposure? And why is it so important? Because we've been conditioned to think and believe a certain way. We've been conditioned to operate in this magnitude of where we are comfortable and this is just enough, but you know it's not. And so one of the things I always talk about, or I always mention, is the fact that you'll hear me say 95% of people are moved by emotions. And that's what the ones who control the narrative, they always play on those emotions. And so when you can remove your emotion and you develop your emotional intelligence to what is out there and understand and start studying how someone did, what someone did. How did someone become successful? Not what are they doing or what that case may be, but how did they get there? And when we really start focusing on what we want out of life and focusing on what we want to happen and focus on what we want to manifest in our lives, then that is definitely what is going to begin to manifest. And that's what's going to, you know, that in itself is where we'll make that shift. And when you start seeing other people successful, like if you look at what transpired today, we had individuals that duplicated their job revenue, what they were making a job in a matter of minutes in an hour. So when that transpires and those types of things happen, then success leaves clues. So what would I really say to someone is stop focusing on the lack or stop focusing on what we don't have and focus on what you want out of life. And look at the successful ones that did it and go get it.
Right. And I think sometimes the mindset causes us to miss out on the, as you said, clues or the opportunity that God puts before us, because he says he's given us the means by which we can get wealth. And sometimes we miss that because we are afraid. We look through the lens of fear instead of the lens of opportunity, the lens of our imagination. Now, so God says, come out from among them and be ye separated. And so sometimes the folk that we are around, we love them, but sometimes they are a hindrance to our success. And we have to learn to be around total quality people and get comfortable with them. Because if you notice that when two people go for a walk and you're walking with Deja's going to either have to speed up or you're going to have to slow down. And sometimes that's even natural as a parent. We will slow down for our child, or if we're walking with a parent, or we like walking with someone we're trying to hold hands with, we adjust the speed so that we can walk at the same pace. And that happens naturally. And so the people that we're walking with, we have to make sure that they're in the pace with us. And who's going to shift? Are we going to slow down our goals for that person, or are they going to have to get up the pace so that they can be at the same pace we are? And sometimes we get even uncomfortable with folk who are walking too slow, and they're slowing their goals and their objectives are not. Can two walk together except they agree? Dr. Bytewood.
I think this is such an important question, and it sits on a very important concept. You see, this is the reason why we are so adamant about teaching mindset in everything that we do. Because we know that this is a vehicle that we make easy. We know that we provide the mentoring and coaching, but we also know that the person's inner self must believe that they are deserving of this wealth, that they're deserving of this abundance. So it's so important that we understand that. You know, this concept reminds me of the movie Akeelah and the Bee. Because in that movie, Marianne Williamson was quoted in which she was saying that it's not the darkness that is what we have to fear, but our light. And many of us have this subconscious belief that we don't deserve this opportunity, that we don't deserve the wealth and abundance that comes from it. And notice I use the word subconscious. So that means it's underneath. So if it's subconscious, it's invisible to the conscious mind and the person doesn't even realize it. So oftentimes we have to just uncover layers and layers and layers of that. And that is why we're so adamant about mindset. Just today, I was having a conversation with someone who's interested in the business. And the person said, well, what if I lose? What if I don't make it? And I asked the person if they played a sport in high school, and they said, yes. What did you play? They said basketball. And I said, well, think about it. If you go up to the free throw line and you say, what if I miss? What's going to happen? And the person immediately said, I'll miss. But they didn't make the connection that they were doing the same thing with this vehicle. When you walk into the free throw line of this opportunity and you're thinking about missing, then you're going to miss. So I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because we need to be real about the fact that we layer into this Be Your Own Bank movement the opportunity to have the skill set, to understand how to do it, to understand how everything affects it, but to do your inner work first so that you will begin to believe that you're deserving of all of the fruits that come from this labor.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned that. Mr. Rogers got us on this Matthew 14 passage. And Peter jumped out in that water without doing the inner work. He was doing okay, and then he started thinking about, what if I sink? And that's what happened. He sank, and so once we get out of the boat, Mr. Rogers, the mindset that we have to keep us from being in the situation that Peter found himself, not being focused and not having that positive mindset that I can do this. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's very apropos at this moment to really understand when Peter initially went with his instinctual desire, he was able to actually walk on the water. However, there was an element that you made mention of, the word fear. But I just want to kind of see how we can just dissect the fact that the ultimate is we all must have faith. But in its totality, it requires us to have faith first. And faith determines two outcomes, right? So in order to have fear, you have to have faith in fear. So the mere fact is that it's the same operational principles that, even as Dr. Bythewood alluded to the fact that when the gentleman went to the free throw line, he had a choice to have faith of a favorable outcome, or he chose fear that the outcome was not be favorable. So ultimately, we still have control of that, even in the midst of our instinctual desire is designed to pull us toward the ultimate success. So when we take the time to be transformed and renewing of our mind, then as you even alluded, sometimes we have to find partners that is going to allow us to speed up, because sometimes we've been too slow. And because we've been too slow, we begin to sink because our surroundings are designed to pull us forward. And even in our whole Matthew 14, even in the midst of the storm, Jesus declared that we will make it to the other side. So we already operate from a position of victory, but are we willing to allow to be turned inside out? But I would submit to us that ultimately, fear is a perspective based on our limited understanding of the power of our faith.
Right, and it's amazing that you mentioned that, because Paul says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but one of power, sound mind, and so fear is not only an emotion, but it's a spirit that can take hold in us. And we have to rebuke that spirit and recognize that we can do all things. Because faith is not faith in faith, as you said, or faith in fear, but it's faith in God. And we can do all things through Christ, who gives us the means and the strength to overcome whatever obstacle that's standing before us, whatever mountain that's there. We can, because of our faith in him, we can speak to that mountain and it can move out of the way. And so faith is so very important, that the correct mindset is there, and that we keep the same pace with those that we partner up with. I can remember when I after I had those 2 strokes, and I was trying to walk again, and I would try to go walking with my daughters, and they wouldn't slow down for me. They walk off, and I had to pick my pace up to keep up with them, and that's what gave me strength, trying to keep up with what's happening. And so we find ourselves, when we're talking about getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, we got to pick up the pace and get up at 5 and learn how to trade. We have to be on the calls in the evening, because we have to pick our pace up. Some folk make it and some folk don't, because some folk look and some folk see. And so, Ms. Dyer, I'm sure you got something to say about how do we help people keep up with us?
They just have to make a decision. This is where we make an internal decision inside our job. Are you going to have a covenant with faith, or are you going to have a covenant with fear? I mean, it's really that simple. So what is it that you desire and you want out of life? You know, you're making a covenant for your decisions. You're making a covenant for what it is that you desire out of life. And so if I know that I want something, and you think about it, when we look ahead, you know, just like when we talk about when I retired from the military, I became a licensed financial advisor. And one of the things that made me shift from that, one of the things that made me shift from here to this educational process where families are being empowered is because of the simple fact that I looked forward. The military always taught us something about leaning forward in a foxhole. What does that mean? That means that we don't focus on the right now, we focus on what we want and what we need to get accomplished, because this is a path and it's a journey. We have to pull back and plan to where we want to go. And so when I lean forward in the foxhole with what I was doing, what you always see is individuals at retirement, you learn that retirement is a financial status and it's not an age. And you see many individuals, unless they have to be outside of a certain spectrum, you see many individuals that are not able to retire. You see many of our grandparents and many individuals who are still working at retirement age, a quote unquote retirement age. And so that in itself should be motivational enough for you to take a shift and say, you know what? It's got to be something more. It has to be something different. That in itself should make me take a shift and say, you know what? I'm going to go for it, because that plan that we have, it doesn't work. It does not work. And I could not allow my name to be attached to that outcome. You know, when you're sitting down with clients or you're talking to individuals, or, you know, I feel like my name has value to it. And I could not allow my name to be attached to those plans when they get to that age that they want to retire, and they cannot. And so that's what happens the majority of the time. You have some who are in a financial position where they're able to do what's required to obtain the desired results that they want, but that's not the average person. So that's not even a norm. You really have to position yourself to where you're willing to lean forward in a foxhole and stop living day to day, check to check. What is it going to be required for me to move forward? Because if what I'm doing has me in this position, then there has to be something that is going to transition in your life that's going to be different. You have to be willing to do different.
Yeah, and be different. And that becomes actually a part of who you are. You know, if you're just trying to just do something because you're told to do it, it's a struggle. But you have to see the value of being transformed. And not only transform, when you transform your mind, you transform from your situation, transform relationships, transform you're able to organize a relationship and place value on them, because some relationships have no value. Some relationships are people are constantly taking from you and they add nothing to your life, and you have to understand that, and you have to understand the role that they will be able to play in your life. And so you have to be around totally positive people who are trying to do the same thing you're doing, people who have the same goals. And sometimes I think Paul put it this way. He was talking about marriage in 2 Corinthians. He said, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And that believers part is so important. If you're trying to walk with someone who don't believe the same things that you believe, and putting your finances toward, putting your time, your efforts toward, then it's going to be very, very frustrating to maintain that relationship. And so values, how do you determine the kind of values people have before you get in relationship with them and allow them to have input into what you do? Because everybody will take their turn trying to tell you what you should and should not do. And so how do you determine that the value that you place on people's opinions?
One of the things that I love about this group is that we're all like-minded, and, you know, energies attract. Energies have to be aligned or they won't even be able to be in the same room. So should we be evaluating people's values? Absolutely. But one of the things that all three of us are really good at is vibrating at a frequency that's just about love. It's just about doing the right thing. It's just about having a servant heart. And when you do that, you begin to look up, and those people who are attracted to you fit into that vein. And we found that people who come into our fold and their energies don't match, we don't really have to say anything. because they kind of take themselves out. So what we're doing is we're following your advice and we're analyzing value, but we're doing it on an energetic level to the point where individuals automatically following your advice and we're analyzing value, but we're doing. I'm not sure what that was. I heard myself speaking in a delay. So bottom line is we're doing what you're saying. We're just doing it on an energetic level in addition to analyzing the specific values that a person will have.
Hey man, Mr. Rogers, I think Mr. Rogers was trying to get in on the conversation. I think that's what the feedback we heard.
Yeah, that he's trying to. Is he on mute now?
Yeah. So I think even regarding the level of vibration, you know, as Dr. Bythewood was just speaking, that like minds attract like things. But I think I want to kind of help us take a deeper dive to the sense of we all come from various places, and you know, a lot of things that many of you have been able to accomplish, you know, it wasn't necessarily a part of our upbringing. So what has allowed us to be different? What has allowed us to be different regarding our pursuit of excellence and in every aspect of our lives, physically, financially, emotionally. So I've always wondered. I know I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I know that I was graced enough to have intellect and pursuit. So I've always wondered, why do we stand out when we come from households that may not necessarily have been pre-exposed to this level of information and intel? And I guess my question and my thought process would be, as we have been around, just like the disciples were, they had seen Jesus, you know, do multiple miracles. But at some point, even being around the environment, ultimately they had to take ownership of their existence. And I think so often we have not been able to hold people accountable to their own realities, regardless of what someone else may be trying to seduce them into. Ultimately, you know, we've been given the will and the free mind to accept that. So I that's something definitely I know I want to make sure that our listeners, you know, come with the fact that, yes, you know, I want you to be able to inhale your future and exhale your past. And each and every day, you know, today is the day of salvation. So any moment we can be awakened out of sleep. But I know our responsibility is to sound the alarm. And for those who are willing to adhere to the instruction, then we're going to build a wall with them together.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. And it's good for us to just kind of look back and see where it is that God has brought us from. And I said, wow, a son of a bootlegger is a bishop. Who would have thought that? And, you know, he sold that liquor, he made that liquor, and he sold it every day. But he also had a business, he had a construction business, but he made his money, most of his money, selling bootleg whiskey. And so he taught that business acumen was passed on that level. And then he always made us go to church. We couldn't miss church on Sundays. And so I think the idea that someone thought of a higher realm than we were, because my sister, she graduated. She has a BSN, and not a BSN, a master's in business administration, MBA, and she has an engineering degree, and so he always wanted something more for us, and he pushed us in that direction. He always told us we could do other things. Now, my other cousin, the thing that set me out from them, my brother's dead from an overdose of cocaine, and most of my cousins who are my age are dead, as it relates to drugs and that kind of thing. And so I think the thing that made me different was I was an athlete, and I was an athlete in high school and an athlete in college. And so I didn't drink and I didn't smoke. And so that was the thing that saved me and became a part of who I was. And, you know, after I got deeper into college and, you know, got my calling from the Lord, then it was, you know, it was just a whole nother boat. But it was different because of the relationships. And that's why it's so important to me, the relationships and the people who became my friends. And I always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And so who you have relationships with on that level will dictate your outcomes, many of your outcomes. And so that's why I say you have to be, it's very important in who you are connected with, because they will determine your future. And so I answer your question that way, Mr. Rogers. I'll see if Ms. Dara or Dr. Bytewood has a response to that question you asked.
Go to his, you say to your question or to his question?
To his question, you know, he asked what happened, what made us different, made the difference as far as our backgrounds that we grew up with, and the outcomes that we have been able to achieve, overcoming those obstacles that perhaps were a part of our backgrounds.
Well, I definitely say for me, it was focus. And the one thing that I definitely love is that the fact that my mother always told me my circumstances didn't dictate my reality. It's like she passed and she's been gone since I was 28 years old. But to always hear that resonating in the back of my mind and my thought processes, you know, to always know that this is something that she poured into me from the time I was young, because she was terminally ill. And to have to watch that and grow up with that, and I'm the oldest. So statistically, what I was told by several people, and always, you know, you always that you're going to be a statistic. You know, my mother was a single parent. I have three, I'm the oldest. Me and my sister had to work all the time to assist in the household. That was our reality. And so what happens is when you get into those circumstances and when you get into those environments, you're so focused on the right now, but you're not focused on the future. You close your mind to what's really out there and what you can become or what's available to you. But that's not what I did. And that's because I had that foundation. So what makes us different is a lot of times that there are people that don't pour into you. And I remember being a teenager, I had an aunt that poured into me. You know, she poured positivity. She poured, you know, just a lot of encouragement. And when you're in an environment and in a world where so many people that around you are negative and so many people around you are just, you know, they bash and it's a lot of hate in their hearts and, you know, mad at the world for their circumstances, that's where I couldn't live. Because I remember what my mother always told me, and I remember the pouring of my aunt. And so when I think now for what we're doing, is everybody's not going to receive it just right away. But we have a responsibility. It's all about paying it forward. And if we actually got exposed to information, and with our professional backgrounds, we had information, and when you look at it, it's all around us and we're participating in it, but everybody doesn't know. So somebody has to say, I'm willing to be that change agent. Somebody has to say, I'm willing to do different. And that's what we are. That's why we're here. Because if you look at just our backgrounds and what we've accomplished and what we've done, we really could keep this to ourselves, but that's not going to do what Christ wants us to do. That's not, you know, people need change. This is about people's economic freedoms. This is about being able to shift their lives. This is about being able to control your narrative. And so when you start seeing the shift happen, like I see it in my children, I see them understanding the markets, I see them never having to live a life, and you always want people to do better than you. You always want them to elevate higher than you. So if I'm gonna do it in my family, I'm definitely gonna do it in yours, because we have access to information that's gonna shift the narrative in its totality.
Amen. And then you got that person who says, you're going to do better than what I'm doing. And we put that in our children, and they understand that, and you can show them how. They accept. Sometimes they're saying, wow, can I learn that? Can I learn how to do that? You know, because a lot of people, when they look at the charts, they say, wow, what is that? That looks like one of those x-ray charts or something. You know, they're trying to figure out what's going on with EKG chart. You know, they kind of figure out what's going on with it, and they can't read it. And when we can sit down and make it plain and they can understand it, that gives a whole new meaning to what's hidden, because in those charts are trillions of dollars hidden in plain sight. But because we can't read it, we can't understand it. That's what I say about the newspapers and those last pages where they have the stock market there. A lot of folk look at those and it doesn't mean anything. It's just a bunch of jumbled up numbers, but that's money that we can't interpret it because it's hidden in plain sight, because it's right there in our paper. It's the same paper that everybody else get, but we can't read it. And so we just, it might as well say we back to 1860, 1850, you know. Put that down, boy. You ain't got no business trying to read that. What is that, you know? And so you look at that and it has no value to you because you can't read. You don't even know what it really says. And so, and that should no longer be in these times when we walk around with masters and doctorate degrees, bachelor's degrees, and we can't read the financial papers. You know, I was shocked when my goddaughter told me that she worked on the floor in Washington, D.C. of the stock market, and she didn't know how to trade. I think she shared that with you. And she was a supervisor, and they hadn't taught her how to trade. And there was a little boy in there whose daddy worked in the foreign exchange, and he was trading, and he didn't have a degree, and she was his supervisor. And they didn't care to share that information with her, that she had a specific task that she had to carry out, and that's all she needed to know. And so they deal with us on a need to know basis. And so somebody in those 101 and 203 business courses felt like we would never have a need to know that information, even though they made us buy that Wall Street Journal. They didn't teach us how to read it. Why is that, Dr. Byfoot? Go ahead.
Well, I definitely want to answer that question, but if I could please follow up on Ms. Dyer's comments real quick. I 100% agree that focus is one of the reasons why we are where we are. But I also want to acknowledge this. We are the only people in our household that are on this call. So there are other individuals that had the same opportunities that we had that lived with us. And I think what sets the three of us apart is our servant heart. We come to the table with an inkling, with an inner drive, with a desire to want to do for the masses. And as in Ms. Dyer's comments, we could keep it to ourselves. But the fact that we have a servant heart, to me, added with the focus is one of the reasons why we're here. So now let me address the question that you just asked. And it really is something that I can speak to in terms of the supervisor and her not really understanding. So when I was a consultant, one of the things I used to do is to study areas outside of finance and economics with the intent that if I could speak to the whole organization, if I could speak to the whole CEO, it would allow me to be better and add more value. So one of the things I used to study was the human resources literature, and I came across something that's very important. And that is that there was a statistic that said the failure rate for first-time promotees. Let me make sure you're following me, listening audience. That means in organizational America, if you get a promotion for the first time, your success rate is only 17%. 17% of people who get promoted the first time succeed, the rest fail. But then when you look at the second time you get promoted, the success rate is 83%. So being in organizations and watching this statistic unfold, I realized what was going on. And this is what made me come up with the Bytwoodism. If you know what you're doing, you will always have a job. And if you know why you're doing it, you'll always be the boss. What we do in organizations is we hire someone and we say, this is your job, this is your task, this is your role. And if you do a good job at that task, you do a good job at that role, and you don't make anyone upset, now you get promoted. Well, you have no idea why you were doing what you were doing. You studied the manual. You did what you were asked to do. You processed the information, but there's no connection to the why. Why are we doing this? What is the overall goal of the company? They weren't at those meetings. So that is the reason why the failure rate is so high the first time, because you can become a supervisor, but have no idea why you're doing what you're doing. And that supervisory role is so important. And that is why we're so big about making people understand that this is what we're doing, but here's why we're doing it. This is a skill set we're teaching you, but here's why it's important. Because that allows us to go beyond the paradigm of the old way of sharing information. We reward people for processing information, but not for critically thinking through the process, because that's where the wealth building comes from.
That's right. And now here's we're approaching the end of our show. The thing that I don't want us to do today is not to clarify for those who are listening, who are first, second time listeners to our show. And we've been talking about a process. We've been talking about putting ourselves in a position to accumulate wealth. I want us to make that plain of just how does one connect and how does one become a part of what we're talking about today. Because I know my youngest daughter, I was sharing with her, and she said, "Oh, that's that Forex stuff," and she just left it out there like that. She said, "Oh, yeah, all my friends." She's 20 years old. All my friends are talking about that, and you know, they're talking, but they don't have any awareness about how to connect and well, what's necessary for them to be involved. Can one of you share that?
Absolutely, I can. So what I want you to understand, and all our listeners, I want you to understand that what we're talking about is, yes, the largest financial market in the world. This market trades at $6.6 trillion a day. And so when she's making reference to, oh, that Forex stuff, or, oh, what that is, we're talking about the largest market in the world. And so when I say 6.6 trillion, yes, I'm talking about 12 zeros. So if you really want to put that in perspective. And so what a lot of people, you know, where can you get the information? And so what a lot of people hear is, we know about the credit market and we see a lot on credit, but I want you to understand it's bigger than that. It's larger than that. And so this is where you really can control the narrative of your life. You can control the narrative of what's taking place in your in your personal world and your communities. And so how do you learn a skill set? Because that's really what it is. It's about learning a skill set. And so I think there was a comment mentioned, and that comment was about it squiggly lines, is this, is that, and what I get to understand. And see, that's where we have to push through that resistance of wanting to remain uneducated, because we are educated on everything that we do. And we mentioned jobs and what we know and what you don't know on that job. We will participate in all of those things, and we'll be a part of all of that, but we will educate ourselves for someone else's wealth. So just remember, the business owner will never pay you enough to be his neighbor. So we will educate and go get the degrees that's required and go do all of the things that we need, but we have to take that same thought process, that same initiative, and do it for ourselves. So where do you find out more information about Be Your Own Bank, hidden in plain sight? On our website, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. I'll say that again, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. On that first page, you will find out about our mission statement, who we are. There is an About Us tab. You know, all of this is there. And there's also contact information. So if you're ready to accept the challenge to learn how to be your own bank, that's what this is all about. And I'll ask you a question. And I really, really want you to just put this in perspective and think about it, because our banks trade our money. So we're talking about what's already being done. You can go on glassdoor.com and you can see information that's already transpiring. You can see job titles for the skill set that you learn when you make a decision to enroll into your financial future. So we talk about you enroll, you learn, and you profit. You're going to learn how to put yourself in a position of profit. And so when you really, really, really understand that, it's a no-brainer. It's something that's required of us. It's something that we need to do. But BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. And when you understand that and you navigate and you say, you know what, I'm ready to accept the challenge to be my own bank. Now those questions, because I'm talking about what banks do with our money already. Information that's really been hidden in plain sight. Banks move the market. It's the largest market in the world. So what are they doing? They're trading your money. And when you think about it, over the last 5 to 10 years, just ask yourself, how much has your bank paid you for using your own money? Just think about that for a moment. And then you think about how that makes you feel. And so this is that reality and that gut check. If you can learn a skill set to do exactly what the banks do with your money, would you take advantage of it? So the answer is absolutely, because they're paying individuals a salary anywhere from $120,000 a year to $307,000 a year. Now I want you to think about the return on investment for that. Think about the return on investment for that financial institution using your money. So if that's what's happening with your check, with your money that you deposit in a bank, when you deposit it, they hold it and you don't even have access to it. So doesn't it just make sense that you're going to learn a skill set to where you can receive that same return on investment for your family? That's what this is about. BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. And that's also why the book that Be Your Own Bank Hidden in Plain Sight is being released this Thursday. So that's for you, where you can also go on that same website and order your book. BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. That's where they need to go, Bishop.
That sounds great, you know, we just have to, somebody said, well, how much that's going to cost me? I say, well, how much it costs you to go to your job? You got a $500 suit on and you're going to a $300 a week job. I mean, I gotta buy a car. I gotta get to work, gotta make a car payment, you gotta pay insurance on it, you know, you gotta buy gas. So, I mean, doing any kind of job is going to cost you to make money. It's going to cost you to make money. When you go to even just to a trade school, you got to pay a tuition. You got to pay tuition to go to a community college. You got to pay tuition to go to a university. And so education costs. It costs because what value, and you have to ask yourself, what value do I put on my mind and improving my mind and being able to have some information I can pass on to my children, you know, because God said we ought to leave a legacy for our children. So what kind of legacy are we going to leave for our children? And so it's certainly a challenge, and certainly something we need to really think seriously about it. I'm sure that Mr. Rogers has something to say along those lines about the cost of ignorance. It's cost you to be ignorant. And
wow, I mean, that's a mouthful there, Bishop, because I always, and I want to help our listeners understand that obviously, you know, we are tremendous proponents of mindset. And, you know, word association creates emotions, behaviors, and ultimately outcomes. So generally speaking, when someone is concerned about cost, unfortunately, they are housed and operating in that boat that we're talking about getting out of, and which is a scarcity mentality. Because as you just alluded, not having this information has cost many of us decades of lack of impact. From a community standpoint, it has cost us tremendous declination in our places of fellowship and truly our legacy, because what we've been great at is transferring inaccurate information when it comes to financial stability. And, you know, let's just deal with the pink elephant in the room, right? Unfortunately, people of color have, over the last 4 decades, have seemingly become a badge of honor to be dependent upon the government for our livelihood. And we've gone from a program that was designed for temporary, but it has become a lifestyle. And as for me as a believer, it's completely, totally against what the Word of God says about every person who has come into a regeneration of their thought process and their mind. So the cost is simply about us understanding that 2 outcomes are going to happen. We can be entertained with our cost and end up in financial traps, or we can be made to invest so that we can now reap the rewards and create our own financial outcome and create our own legacy. The choice is simple. Those who associate with cost always have the mindset of the children of Israel when they were released. And they were given all the things, all the gold that they needed. They had all the resources. And God said to the children of Israel, once you leave this place, I'm going to hook you up so well that you'll never have to look back. But that mindset of scarcity, even though they had been provided all the gold necessary to create their own future, they felt more comfortable with going back. So I just want us to eulogize the word cost and understand that by not having this information, someone else is always dictating and controlling our outcomes. But the investment is minimal. I mean, we think about we commit ourselves to our collegiate experience. That's a 4 to 5 year process before we can actually realize anything. And at that point, you're still subject to someone determines your value. However, with this information, with the leadership of individuals that you've already heard from our listeners, you can change your family dynamic for as little as $9.17 a day. That gives you an entry point into an industry, being your own bank, that facilitates nearly $11 trillion a day. So if we think about it from that perspective, you and I can't go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's and get a meal for two, but we have an opportunity to change our financial paradigm for as little as $9.17 a day. And the wonderful part about it, because of the God-breathed, inspired strategy that was created by the trade whisperer, Ms. Dyer herself, you know, we're able to put people in position in that first 14 to 30 days that they can really have the opportunity to cash out, and then to layer that with the mindset foundation of a Dr. Bythewood, whose expertise is in bank mergers and acquisitions as far as his dissertation. So I definitely want to yield to him and kind of have him capture the essence of cost versus investing in ourselves, and then the ultimate outcome.
So as you pass the baton, here's a way to think about this. I am academically trained in an institution where if you brought the type of money that it would cost to start here to get an education that does not necessarily give you a skill set, nor does it give you the preparation to build wealth, the most you could buy is a textbook. And these days, you might even only make a partial payment on that textbook. So for the price of a textbook, you can change your life. So literally, this is a no-brainer. We're in a situation where the economical value that you can get by doing this, it literally is the type of thing that is so high in value that everybody that's exposed to this should know that this is what they should do, and they should do it as quickly as possible.
That's such a great example, Dr. Bythewood, because I thought about all those textbooks that I tried to sell back to the bookstore, and they would give you maybe a fourth of what you paid for them, because one textbook would cost you what, $300-400, and those accounting books are really high, and so. But nowadays, the beauty is that my youngest daughter, should graduate in the spring, and we're just praying that she's able to do that. Most of her books were electronic books that they would get, you know, through the computer and whatnot. So they were a lot less costly, but they still cost money, even though they were, you know, just going to a mainframe and downloading the information for the day. But that is exciting. That's an exciting opportunity for folk to take advantage. And now, what we need to recognize is that in Proverbs is a very interesting book. It's written for people who are coming out of 80 years of slavery. In 80 years, the people have forgotten God and their relationship with God. And so the writers of Proverbs is trying to reconnect their life principles back to God. And so the word fool is used several different ways in that passage, in that book. And one of them that I take particular note to is the one who thinks that he's right in his own sight. He knows everything already, so nobody can teach them anything. And that's why it's so difficult for some of us to absorb this information that we're sharing, because we think we know already. But just take the time to open your mind and to listen and to come on Tuesdays at 5 and just listen to these brilliant folk that God has allowed us to connect with. And I'm so excited because all of them are smarter than me, and I can learn from them and absorb things from them. And that's what I always try to be, surround myself with people who have information I don't have, and I always can consult with them and know that I'll get a good answer, an answer that's beyond my understanding. And so I'm thankful for Dr. Bythewood coming on. I'm thankful for Mr. Rogers. I'm thankful for Ms. Dyer. And we just want to encourage you to share this information, to share this broadcast on Facebook, and just be ready to hear. Ms. Dyer, you have something you want to share with us?
Absolutely, absolutely, Bishop. So even tonight, we can offer our listeners a test run. So if you go to the website, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com, and you click that tab live stream, you will definitely see where you can log in for our 9 o'clock BYOB Market Talks, followed by a talk with the finance doctor. So I'm talking about Eastern Standard Time. So that'll be myself, and then of course, Dr. Bythewood that you have heard from today. But you also want to make sure you go on that website, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com, BeYourOwnBankMovement.com, because this is where on Thursday morning, you want to log in, and you definitely want to make sure that you're there. You want to order your book, Be Your Own Bank, Hidden in Plain Sight, and understand that the first 200 orders are going to receive a personalized message inside of that book. So I know those are going to go fast. So you want to be on Thursday morning to make sure you get your order in. So I've enjoyed this. I want to thank our family at the newrejoice904.com. I want to thank each and every last one of you all, and you specifically, Bishop, thank you for all that you have done. And I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Dyer. And again, we want to thank Dr. Bythewood and Mr. Rogers. They are two brilliant friends and men that we enjoy spending time with, and we enjoy spending time with you, Ms. Dyer. And we just want to thank you for what you share and your willingness to share the information with others. We want our community to be its own bank. And so we say bless you and thank you for listening on this evening. God bless you.
Okay, we're clear. Yep, we're done. You can talk now.
We clear, Ms. Dyer?
Yeah, I got to let me stop the Facebook Live before we talk.